Hello and welcome to my live stream. We are here on August 25th. We're live streaming on Tuesday night. Remember, we come and we are live streaming every Sunday and Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Eastern. And tonight I'm carrying on about the officer. Now remember last week, well actually let's go back the week before. The officer was in charge of an army in a city. He conquered a whole half of the city. But then that bored him because he was fighting against other people. He was into a type of hell. Now, of course, remember in Spiritism that hell means to other religions, hell is like eternal punishment, but there is no eternal punishment in Spiritism. Hell is there for them to decide, for a person to decide, do they like being with other people like them? And then they will change their personality and their character, and they'll ask for forgiveness and help, and they'll be allowed to rise above that. So he got bored with trying to keep in power there, and then he went into the earth area and worked with a wizard to take over people's body, did many evil things there. And so then finally he actually helped with this like wizard magician person tried to cause a really nice priest to kill himself. And of course, then the spirit world came and said, no, you can't do that. And you, pointing to the officer, you're going down deeper. So the officer went deeper into hell. And now this is what happened to him after he went deeper into where he actually belongs. So let's talk about this. Oh, and before I forget, please subscribe, hit the like button, and please give me a comment, and that will help other people discover Spiritism. But then what I'm talking about here is not a good aspect of the spirit world. But we have to understand there is this area that is not nice, right? It's the lower zone, which is around the crust of the earth up to the bottom levels of heaven. And that's, kind of a dark place. And if you see a picture of that, let me show you a picture of that from the movie No Solar, which I would say is a great movie. Let me show that to you. So it's dark. So as you go higher, the light is brighter and brighter. And here in the lower zone, it's pretty dark. This is a picture from the movie No Solar. It's also called Astral City. You can find it with English subtitles. And I recommend that to anyone who would like it. The book is also called No Solar by Francisco Chico Xavier. And it's the spirit of Andre Louise. And he actually has a series of 13 books, which I recommend to everybody to read. It's great books. So what the spiritists call, what people that call purgatory or hell, spiritists call the dark abyss, which is even below the crust of the earth. If you want to look at things in a geometric area, it helps people place things in their minds where things are, although we actually are living in a logically constructed world. So the officer who was then didn't learn his lesson. First, he was put into the lower zone. Then he went lower. And now he's going even lower. So why does that happen? Well, look, the lower zone and the dark abyss is made for people who are criminal types, right? Who are selfish and materialistic, to be with others like them. And hopefully they see how others are around them, and that softens them up, because Spiritism tells us that the spirit world fights evil with evil, because there's no person who's all bad or all good. Everyone has, mixture of both. Even someone like Stalin, who was and Mao, who were just complete murderers, murdered millions of their own people. Even they had part good in them. So when that happens, hopefully it affects them. Now, for the officer, what he did is he just made him more focused and wanted to be even more powerful than those other evil people. Now, let's see what happens to him when he goes down even further. I'll start. The officer resumed his narrative. This is with the J.S.M. Ward, the medium. As soon as I realized my position, I began to hunt about, and was not long in discovering that, bad as the division above had been, this was worse. The darkness seemed more intense, and the place seemed very empty, but this latter was not for long. I heard wild yells of despair, shrieks, and screams, and out of the darkness burst a herd of spirits. Behind them, I saw for the first time the real spirits of evil, of which the devils usually described are but shadows. I had seen those shadows occasionally on the astral plane. They were the figures formed by the imagination of those who had believed in them. But these were something different. They had not bat wings, cloven hoofs, or horned heads, as usually depicted through the devils formed by the imagination of men and found on the astral plane had them. These spirits, who had never been men, were some of the most appalling creatures it is possible to imagine. So let me stop there for a second. I would say that these spirits were men, but they have gotten so much into evil, they have just not changed themselves, and they become more and more of what they really are. Their outward appearance became what their thoughts were, and they became, to the officer, they became like they could never have been men, and therefore they were very in bad shape. They looked horrible, and of course, these people are not there. There is no Spiritism tells us there's no such thing as the devil. There's no, master of hell, as people think. The people who are in the dark abyss, purgatory, are people there because they don't change their ways. Now, we've been told that there are people who've been there for like 10,000 years. There was a story in this great book by Chico Xavier, dictated to Xavier by the Spirit Andre Luis, called Liberation. And in this, Andre Luis went and tried to help this lady. But first he met one of these kind of judges in hell. And this judge was named Gregorio. And the interesting thing about this person is that he was actually Pope Gregory. And I forgot what Gregory number he was. He was actually a pope. When he died, he went to heaven, and he was he got upset because he wasn't treated as, the superior religious figure. And therefore, he found his own level down into one of the levels of purgatory, the dark abyss. And he became a judge. And he was there for hundreds of years. This book is about getting him out of there and help rescuing him from his misdirection. So then they said they were driving the herd of spirits before them, lashing at them with what were apparently whips, and they struck out and cried, "How like you, your master the devil?" Then they shouted the most fearful blasphemies and screamed, "Blaspheme, you swine, blaspheme. We are the real gods. The thing you call gods are but figments of your brains." Even as they were shouting this, they reached me, and one struck me across the face. Acting on the principle that I had always followed, I turned upon him savagely, but this time it was of no use. Again and again I was struck, and knew that at length I had found my master. I fell writhing to the ground beneath those savage blows, but at once someone plunged what appeared to be a goad into me, and I sprang up with a yell and rushed madly forward with the rest of the herd. Now, you can see why the spirit world sent him even further below. The officer had already made himself the master of whatever situation he was in before. He actually became quite successful, if that's what you want to call it, in the places in purgatory. They finally found a level to him where he could be treated and he couldn't do anything about it. And so essentially the spirit world is saying, okay, finally you reach a place where you know how you've treated other people. And of course, this is all about our lessons on earth, right? All the atonements. This is why we're on the planet of atonement, where we have to atone, pay back for our past wrongs. And most of those paybacks are things that happen to us. And in some sort or other type of trial, things that happen to us are things that we had done to others in previous lives. That's why you should forgive everybody around you, because anyone that's doing you harm or bad, it's okay to be upset with them, but you can't blame them too much, since they're actually an actor in a scene playing a part in order to teach you a valuable lesson. So I'll carry on. Now, before I forget, also, now you notice they say, we are the real gods, and you see this as a recurring theme in the places, the dark abyss and the lower zone, with the people who are in charge of cities and kind of mafia-like colonies in these areas, is they really want you to concentrate on on thinking about them and not about the spirit world. Because if your mind wanders and then you know enough to ask for help, then the good spirits will come and try and help you out of that situation. So they're always trying to mold your mind so you think that there is no way out. And of course, that's one of the, that's, as I was just reading the spirits book the other day, of people who are in these situations. And that's one of the punishments, really, that, or I shouldn't say punishment, but lessons they learn, is they think this is forever, for eternity, but it's really not. They don't know that once you change your attitude, help will come. So even as they were shouting this, they reached me, and one struck me across the face. Oh, I said that. So now began a period of awful terror. On and on again, we hunted through these great dark spaces, without stay or intermission, till I began to feel as if all that was really I was being hammered out of me. We could not speak to each other. We simply stumbled and fell, got up again, and ran on, heedless of each other. There were men and women here side by side. Most wore clothes, though a few were stark naked. The clothes were of all ages and countries, and were mostly torn and ragged. We were able to perceive each other in the murky air, but we could not see the country through which we ran. We ran out of the darkness into the darkness, knowing nothing, caring nothing, if we could but escape from the whips of our masters. And behind us rose that wild chorus: how like you, your master, our burden is heavy, our reward small. On forever. There is no hope for you. You are damned forever. This is the unpardonable sin, for you have worshipped the devil instead of God. So again, they're trying to mentally condition them to give up all hope. Carry on. And then they kept saying, no, there is no God. Men do but beguile themselves when they say there is a God. There is no such thing as good except as the opposite of evil. Evil really exists. Good does not. There is no such thing as a good man. Christ is a myth. We are the only beings who are real. Despair, weep. Your good days are over. It were better for you if there had been no such thing as life after death. We serve you in the world. Now you must serve us in turn. So you see this as a recurring theme, is they try and take all hope out of you. So you can't even for a moment try to hope for something and wish and desire something better. So they're just constantly, and again, this is how, this type of propaganda has been used since, for fascists and communists, say, and, even now the communist Chinese are trying to destroy the church and religion, in Tibet, all those things that they don't want. These people don't want you to worship anything but themselves. And you see this here on earth. They don't want you to think about God and some sort of higher divine laws and your conscience that full of, what is good, that there is such a thing. There is no such thing as relative morality, although they want you to believe that. And for those of us who know, there is no such thing as relative morality. There is good, and there is good in what we do. And we know when we do wrong because we listen to our conscience. But these people, they don't want you to do that. This is, again, you'll see this par excellence in this story here, as they're trying to tell them there's no hope for you and you're there forever. Of course, this breaks people down. I carry on with what the officer said. These and constant other taunts and jeers greeted our ears the whole time. Most of what they said was lies, said to reduce us to utter despair, and the more dangerous because there is a certain modicum of truth in it. So, of course, the officer thought what I said. I soon found out that I was quite unable to read what was in their minds, as I had been able to do with the men in the division above. They seemed, by the mere exercise of their wills, to be able to build up a wall round their thoughts, which I was quite powerless to penetrate. At length I cried to one of the devils, "Is there no way by which I can become one of the drivers instead of the one driven?" Of course, here he is. He's back to trying to get back on top. No matter how horrible the heap is, he's trying to get back on top. And it reminds me of in one of the stories said by spirits to the Reverend G. Vaon, these group of spirits went into this colony. And it was a colony, it was like a mining colony. And they were into the group of spirits made themselves visible because they wanted to help these people who were being held slaves and had to do work. They went into the gate, and in this gate, they saw the captain of the guard. And the captain of the guard, was very nice to them in a sarcastic way. And then finally, the captain of the guard said, "No, you guys can't be in here. You're higher spirits." And the spirit said, "Oh no, you're going to do what I tell you to. Now, you can make a choice. You can come and lead us. You can help us lead us to where the cave is, and then you can think about, and some other time, maybe you can come with us. But you want to help us or not? This is your chance." And he said, "Okay, I'll help you." And as he was walking to the opening of the cave, and the spirits were walking by, and they were seeing all these miserable creatures around them in this dark city in the lower zone. And then they could see the furnace and the smoke from the cave. And the captain said something about, here's these poor souls. And the spirit says, "Well, what do you care about them? They're in bad shape. You're in a much better shape because you're a captain." And then the captain turned around and looked at the higher spirit and said, "I'm surprised of how little you know." He goes, "Don't you understand that I was once one of them, and I had to sacrifice to get to where I am, and now that my torment's even greater because I have to be this way all the time?" And the spirit says, he wrote to Jiva Awan, and goes, he was absolutely right. To be on top of that horrible mountain, you have to be as evil as you can be. Imagine the people who are in charge of other people in North Korea or in Cuba or in Venezuela, the people that are torturing any type of dissident. You almost have to feel sorry for these people because in order for them to keep their power in this, corrupt organization, they have to be as evil as the other people above them want them to be evil. It's the same in the Spanish Inquisition. And so this is, you feel very sorry for it. You feel sorry for the victims, of course, but you also feel sorry for the perpetrators. In Spiritism, they tell us that when something happens to a person, you go, "Well, that person at least paid off their debt." And what you really feel sorry is the perpetrator, because now you know that debt's going to have to be paid. So, then he said, after he said, "How can I become, one of the drivers instead of the driven?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, and he hit him in the face. He goes, "Yes, if you'll go back to the division above and bring down 100 spirits, it can be easily done. Make them believe in the devils and worship them. Have the black mass, and this will soon hurl them down." "How can I return to that division?" I inquired. "One of us will quickly show you the way, but think not that you will be able to escape us when there. No, we will allow you to go do our work, and we shall know at once if you try to escape us." Then the officer said, "Okay, I was allowed to stop behind while the rest whirled on their never-ceasing path. I looked at this malevolent being who had been deputed to me to guide me. He was far larger than I and seemed made out of darkness, if you can understand me. Never for 2 minutes did he look the same. Not merely his face, but his whole form seemed to be constantly changing. He was robed in a long flowing robe of black." So, of course, everything's black because the light is very faint there. "But even while I looked, he became stark naked. Then he changed and became like a goat. And even while I was struggling with my amazement, he became a python. He next resumed his man's shape. Man's, did I say? No, man, however, was vile. He looked as diabolical as this creature did. The face was hideous in the extreme. The eyes were oblong and glittered like a snake's. The nose was hooked like an eagle's beak. The mouth was full and armed with teeth that were pointed and almost like tusks. Malevolence and debauchery seemed stamped on his features, while his hands were almost like talons. They looked so bony. From his body, darkness seemed to ooze. Again he changed, became a column of red flame, which yet gave no light. And from that awful flame came a voice, "Follow this way." We moved along thus, and me and the moving column of flame. Presently, out of the gloom, I heard the sounds of a discordant chanting, and soon I saw what appeared to be a mountain, And on approaching near, I saw that there was a cave, and in it many spirits. My guide assumed a semi-human form, and we entered the cave together. Here we heard the clang of cymbals and the blare of trumpets, and the mingling with them of shrieks and cries, as well as discordant singing. Soon we saw a great throne, and in front of it a huge cauldron of what seemed like fire blazed and roared. On the throne was seated a hideous monster, and into the cauldron they were flinging little boys and girls who screamed as if they were really burning. Of course, it felt like burning, Of course, as just to make sure. When people are tortured and burned or whatever, they feel pain because they think they feel pain. And actually, if they knew that they said, no, I'm not going to feel pain, they wouldn't feel pain. But that's very hard to do when you see this boiling water. It affects them. And then he says, are those really children? The officer said. And the devil type person said, no, they are men and women whom the stronger wills have compelled to assume that form and then offer up in sacrifice. Every now and then, some of the real devils raid the place and throw the whole lot into the furnace. No young children come here. Here are the devils. And as he spoke, a wild shriek arose from the worshippers, and a band of evil spirits rushed to the temple and drove us all, save my guide, into the great cauldron. What it was that burnt, whether it was the will of evil spirits, I don't know, but I suffered awful agonies. At length, the evil spirits disappeared as swiftly as the head they had come, and we crawled out. The rest resumed their service, and I made my way towards my guide. He grinned ferociously and said, truly, my yoke is heavy, is it not? It will still be more so unless you bring us a fine batch of worshippers. I will, I screamed. But why do you want more worshippers? You only torture us when you have us. And he answered, because we hate you. We hate you with an intensity of which your feeble brains have no comprehension. You think you know how to hate, but it is but a feeble imitation of which is almost our life to us. We hate you. As he screamed these words, he seemed to burst into a raging fire, and it was some time before he resumed his human shape. Now, again, this has been said by other spirits writing to spiritist mediums, is that the lower spirits, when there's a higher spirit around, is because there was a question asked, goes, why do these people do harm to us? Well, we never did anything to them. Why do they want harm to come to us? Why do they want us? Why do they put in our minds bad things to do? And the answer is because they are jealous and envious because you have learned, you have pointed yourself to the light, you have embraced the goodness, and just that superiority, that moral superiority, they understand that while they are in pain, you are not. And as we all know from going to school and being with, the more less responsible kids, misery loves company, right? We've all heard that. And when you are in school or you're in situations with not so good friends, they love you to be just as much in trouble as they are, just like with drugs or anything else. They want you to be a druggie if they're a druggie, and they want you to drink if they're drinking, and etc. The same thing everywhere. It's these people who do not have your good in mind they want you to be on their same level. And of course, these people are the same. And now they've run this movie so many times in their mind that they are consumed by hate, and they just want revenge on people who may ever become superior to them. And of course, they don't need to do this, but that's what he wants. So now to your work, he cried, and moved swiftly along for some time. Presently, we seemed to be climbing, but whether we really did, who can say? Suddenly seized me and sprang with me into space. The next thing I realized was I was back in the division above. I had once perceived that it was not the city of hate that I had been placed. He was at the city of hate, which was kind of like either a Roman city, kind of a half Roman city and half city during the Paris of the French Revolution, during the guillotine times. My evil guardian cried, now remember, you cannot stay here for long. Your body has become too gross even for this division of hell. Now, when he says your body's too gross, so here on earth, we are made of dense matter and some energy, right? Our body has some energy. When you go to the spirit world, you become more energy and less matter. But The lower you are into the purgatory, you are a higher ratio of matter to energy. And as you go higher and higher and higher, the very higher spirits are a great higher ratio of energy to matter, much more energy than matter. He goes, and any treachery on your part will be at once punished by the most awful torments. Moreover, I shall immediately fetch you back. I cannot stay here in any comfort, but I shall know what you are doing and thinking, so beware. He had gone, the officer said. What a sigh of relief. I realized it, but I foresaw that my respite would be but short. However, a brilliant idea struck me. If I succeeded in bringing back a good batch, it was likely that I should be sent out again. Therefore, I would try. I found that I was in the miser's country, and the great terror which haunted them was the fear that someone would rob them of their gold. Of course, they had no gold, and if they had, it would not have been of the slightest use. But still, their old instincts of fear and greed were still all powerful. Now, very interesting. Again, in it was, I think it was the book Before Liberation, Andre Louis is sent down into this lower zone. And when he was a child on Earth, he had this grandfather who he really loved. But he never found out what happened to his grandfather in the spirit world. When he was down here in the lower zone, he saw his grandfather, and he was one of these misers. And he described the misers as going around and thinking it was gold, but actually it was just like muddy dirt. But they didn't know. They were just, a group of them would look for gold and hope that no one would rob them. And they were just locked into this miserly memory loop of gold and keeping it. And it was just the fear of being robbed. This, as the officer said. And of course, so everything he's saying is backed up by Spiritist literature. Now, the interesting thing is, Andre Louis said to a rescue mission down in the lower zone, he says, "Can you help my grandfather?" And he goes, "Yes, we can." And it goes, "But he needs to be reincarnated because he needs to get out of that detrimental loop of thinking." He goes, "Well, and of course, Andre, knowing he was in the Nozalar, knew that this was a very long process because they had to carefully plan out his life. Because once you are a decent, good spirit, your life is carefully planned out because you affect many other people, and some of the higher spirits who come and and take positions of power in the world are very carefully planned out, and they have guardian, maybe multiple angels around him to make sure that they are on the right track." But they said, "No, it's not going to be hard for your grandfather." He goes, "Well, how's that?" He goes, "No, he'll just go back as some laborer, and we have a lot of leeway when we incarnate people like that." So that little part of that book is very interesting, because what it does is shows you that those who are like these misers, right, and these are lower spirits, they will be put into positions in the physical world that they will not really make any dent, or very little dent, or change to society or important people within that society. And so there is a sense of noblesse oblige by someone who's in power. Now, of course, I'm not saying everything in power is a higher spirit, because all times they are not, right? Because there's all sorts of people who are giving trials. But and vice versa. There are people that are born very poor that are high spirits, and they're given a trial to rise above that and affect many people around them. But I'm sure there are areas where these, these very simple laborers, people that maybe are not able to read and write, are put there just so they can kind of get through a life, and they can learn a little bit, but they can rewire their personality to some extent. So it kind of shows you, it gives more credence, and it gives you some more understanding of how people are born. And let me go through this again for other people who have not seen this, because this is at the heart of Spiritism. Okay, let me find it. Oh. Here we go. So let's talk about this for a second. So if you have someone like Andre Lewis's grandfather in their previous life, where they knew that he was very miserly, right? Everything is recorded, so they understand that. And then his when he's put into the his next life, was to say his previous life before Andre, he was Andre's grandfather, and then he the way he acted in his current life, right, and the results from his previous life dictate his current life, and now the result from your current life, we'll go to number 3. Your present life is recorded and will be used to determine your next life. Of course, his current life was over, and he had not done much good. He certainly loved his grandson, which was excellent. But other than that, he was really concentrated on money and his own self-pleasure. So therefore, they said, okay, we can make his future life, we can make him very humble. He's not going to ever make much money. He will live hand to mouth like many people do, God bless him. And that will decide what he needs. He needs to be that humble person and to know that everything he makes by his money is very precious to him, and that he's not going to hoard. He's not going to be able to hoard anything. He's going to be able to live day to day. And I tell people then, if a lot of people say, I don't want to be reincarnated again. I don't like this life. And I say, well, if you don't, look, this is the rules. You're not, when you go to the spirit world, no one's going to force you to be incarnated again. In fact, in the book, Memoirs of a Suicide, this one spirit was saying, all of his friends that he was into the Spiritist hospital, they had reincarnated, but he didn't want to, because he knew that in his next life, he'd have to be blind for a period of time because of what he'd done in the previous life. And he just kept waiting and waiting. And of course, he doesn't have to reincarnate, but he will not be able to ascend in the spirit hierarchy until he really learns the lessons, learn the moral lessons, and removes these bad primitive characteristics from his heart and soul, and replaces them with more higher level, love, fraternity, charity. And that's so therefore these people will say, I don't want to go again. Well, they don't have to, but then that means they can't really ascend. And at some point in time, the spirits will show you, okay, this is what life is like in the next level. Is it that bad to go back to Earth in order to get this? And people will go, well, I guess not, right? Because we have to think about our life on Earth is just a momentary in time, right? You are an immortal soul. So our life on Earth, the time moves differently. And to the spirit, being on Earth for 100 years, 80 years, 60 years is not much at all. And therefore they say, okay, if if I have to pay this small price, right? If I have to pay this small price for this reward, it's worth it. And then they come back to Earth. And that's what a lot of people do. They will decide to, okay, I will go and try again and do the best I can. And that's very important for people to understand. So we get back. So he was in the officer in this land of misers, and the officer said, I soon found out I could work these vices to my advantage. To some I promised that if they would worship the devil, he would give them as much gold as they wanted. To the others I promised protection from the tyranny of the rest and the fear of losing all they had. By dint of much hard work, I collected a nice little band who, under my instructions, performed the Black Mass. At first, the evil spirits seemed to pay but little heed to us, but after a time, one or two of them appeared. At length, at one of the services, I noticed a sensation of being dragged, and so did all the congregation. I knew at once what it meant, though the others did not. It meant that the spiritual connection had been formed, and we were about to fall to our own place. The feeling of attraction, almost akin to the law of gravity, grew stronger and stronger. At length, we seemed to be falling. The surroundings slipped away past us, and the solid ground appeared to give way, and we fell. We had indeed become too gross for even the spiritual elements of hate to hold us, and the attraction of what we had made, our God, drew us towards it. So, that is the end of this chapter of the officer. So, again, the officer is Hasn't even thought of the light. He's always thought about how to make himself master of whatever situation he is in, no matter how horrible he has to be to himself and other people. It doesn't have to be that way. And I talk a lot about this as the different levels of heaven. And when I say level, I should say states, but many of us like to think in, in shapes and geometry, right? And so that's why when I say that, heaven is up above around the earth, the lower zone is between the level of heaven, the lower level of heaven and this crust of the earth, and the dark abyss is below it. It's actually it's a way of thinking of those things, but actually it's a state of mind, right? It could all be together in one logical area, but then each person is in their own state and they interact with other people who are in the similar state next to them. Remember, all this is people are placed in the right location by this divine law. Is called the law of affinity, where you go where others are like you. So if you are a pickpocket or a petty thief, you go where others are like you. You are a miser and a hoarder of gold or those type of things, just like the officer said, like it was in one of the books by Andre Louise. Well, you go where others are like you. If you are basically a nice person, you try to do good where you can, you try to help other people, you go where others are like you, and that will be one of the levels of heaven. And so the whole thing of getting higher and higher in heaven is going through education, help, reforming and modifying your character and your personality to be more loving. And as we were told, like in the first levels of heaven, people are still kind of tied to the earth, and they're tied to their country, to their city, to their way of thinking, to their society, culture. But as you go higher and higher, you finally learn that, look, the earth is just a small place. It's just one more campus. Right now, it's a planet of atonement. And all on earth are spirits that are being led by superior spirits in the spirit realm, kind of our administrators. We're in this school. We never see the administrators, but they're there all around us. We're just too ignorant to see them. And they're just trying to make each one of us through a lot of customized curriculum and manipulation of stimuli back and forth. They're trying to make us into better people. And therefore, whatever race, sex we come in, whatever country we come in, it really means nothing. It really means nothing. It's all about putting us in the right environment so that we may learn the lessons we need to learn. And so people in higher levels of heaven understand that, and they don't care about what country you came from or whatever you were. It's really not important. What they care about is your inner self. They care about is, have you advanced? And if you advanced as far as your personality, then you're given an opportunity when you're in one of the levels of heaven to go around and learn. And I talk about the different levels in my book, Heaven and Below. But then I talk a lot about spirits when I'm talking about how do you ascend in the spirit world in my book, Spirits in the Spirit Universe. And in that, I tell you, what are the attributes of a spirit? Because a spirit starts out as a primitive logical concept. Might be a bacteria or animal, whatever. At some point in time, you're given that kind of human thing called free will. Now, there's grades of free will, right? Because you even notice in your dog or cat, there's a certain aspect of free will. But to us, that free will is completely respected by spirits. They do not violate our free will. And that's a close kind of thing, because when you look at the planet we're on and this planet of atonement, we go through determined episodes. We go through that. You are going to be married to that horrible partner because you were horrible before, right? And you are going to have your company go bankrupt because you bankrupt someone else before, right? So those things are set. Now, as you go higher level planets, you have more leeway over how you want to fashion. Just like if you're in college, you decide your own courses. We're in elementary school, and no, you take these courses because they're good for you and you don't know any better. Now, as you go higher in heaven, just around the earth, they will consult with you what lessons you want to learn. If you are in one of the lower zones or are in the purgatory dark abyss, you will be assigned. But even in heaven, then you can say, yeah, I want to do this, or I need to be in this situation. I want to pay for this in this manner, and they will consult with you, and then you reincarnate with friends and family. And so, but all of this is there's one aim, and that's to improve ourselves, right? To take out those primitive emotions. But there's something else combined with us. Not just the earth is not a place for us to become geniuses. It's a place to change our personality. Now, for us to learn about the spirit world, how universal fluid is, how our mind can configure universal fluid, how the universe works, where are the other planets like, how do we help mold civilizations, how do we create galaxies and solar systems? That is all about learning. And so in each of these levels of heaven, you go to schools, and then when you have combined your personality and your knowledge to have real wisdom, then you graduate to another level. And in that level, you don't just get a piece of paper, you are actually given more attributes, kind of like a cell phone that's empty. And as you add more memory to the cell phone, you can add more apps, right? You can say, okay, oh, now I can communicate with other cell phones, or now I can communicate, I can look up whatever data I want to through this, universal cloud. Again, same thing with the spirit. You're given more energy, you're given more ability to go to the universal cloud, pull out information you want. You understand how things work. You can receive and send messages more. You have more control of your mind to peer into things, to peer into the past and future of anybody on earth. And you can, of course, you can wander your level or lower, wherever you'd like to go. So these are things that are part and parcel of the spirit world. And I'm here to explain this to you because I want you to understand what is waiting for you when you pass over. And the more you understand what is waiting for you, and the more the more reason you have to modify your own behavior. Because I'm trying to explain the rules of the game, right? This is the processes of the spirit world. This is the divine laws, the divine processes. We're locked into this. We are so insubstantial and inconsequential that you're not going to be able to dictate how the process works, no matter how rebellious. And I'm sure all of us have been there. And the people who are rebellious are in the lower zone or whatever. They're going to find out this is the process. And yet the rewards of making, and of course, why is that bad to us? Because, we're stubborn. But what do they want you to be? They want you to be a good, kind, loving person. Is that bad? No, it's wonderful. They want you to help other spirits, even people you don't like. But you'll eventually love everyone, because you understand that everyone is in a different maturity level, and they will all become a perfect, wonderful spirit someday. But that's why I'm trying to explain this to as many people that can listen, is that this is the reality. And reality is we're not just carbon-based life forms who live one life and we're gone and we're asleep forever. No, we're just in the process of maturing children, of trying to be better. So anyway, I want to thank everyone who's been with me. Remember, please subscribe, hit the bell, look at my other videos. I have all sorts of videos on YouTube, on my channel. You go to my site, nwspiritism.com. I have many articles. I have books. I have the Spirits book in audio. It's free. You can download the book in iTunes format, right? In audiobook format. I have my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, in PDF. You can download. Of course, I have that on Kindle, audiobook, and paperback if you want to pay for that. But I have it in PDF. Also, I have Spiritism 101 in PDF in French. So if you know anybody in French who wants to know about Spiritism, I have that on my site too, and that is in PDF format. Anyway, I want to say thanks for everyone for being with me. God bless.